ADO.NET, it's basically a collection of namespaces that define a set of types to communicate with different relational database management system. So basically the .NET has a set of namespaces within which it defines a set of types that are optimized and to effectively and efficiently communicate with specific RDBMSs. For example, there are types to communicate with that are optimized to communicate with the Microsoft SQL Server. There are types that are optimized to communicate with MySQL and Oracle and many other RDBMSs. But collectively, all these types that are defined, or collectively all these namespaces that defines these types that allows us to communicate with any RDBMS are called ADO.NET. ADO.NET. A collection of namespaces that define a set of types to communicate with different relational databases. There are different ways that you can communicate with any relational database management system. But basically, there are three layers that you can use to communicate with your respective RDBMS. So there's a connected layer, and there's a disconnected layer, and you can also communicate with your RDBMS with entity framework using the entity framework types. And this layer is actually recommended by Microsoft that you make use of entity framework types when you are communicating with your relational database management system. So what's the difference between these three layers of communicating with your respective RDBMS? It's basically how you implement your code to communicate with your respective RDBMS. For example, with connected layer, we make use of connection objects, command objects, and data reader objects to actually communicate with an external database, management system. When you use the connected layer, we make use of connection objects, command objects. Let's say to make use of command objects, and we also make use of data reader objects to read the data that is returned by the queries that we run on our RDBMS. So we make use of connection objects, command objects, and data reader objects to communicate with the RDBMS. When you make use of the disconnected layer, with the disconnected layer, you actually make use of data sets. With disconnected, you make use of the data set to communicate with your RDBMS. You make use of data set, and you make use of data adapter. Data set is basically the in-memory representation of the external database to which you are trying to connect to. So what basically happens is that you open a connection to the external RDBMS, and then you select the set of records within the tables that you want to select from, and from those records you create your own tables that are going to exist within the memory of your computer where application will be executed. So basically we'll be having the representation of the external database in memory where your application will be executing. And the data adapter is basically used to move changes from an external database to your in-memory database, which is the data set, and from the in-memory data set to external database. And with entity framework,